Hello guys, this is going to be a review of the AKG K545 reference closed back over-the-ear headphones. This is a rather new addition to the headphone lineup in AKG's arsenal. Essentially, this is a high-quality sounding portable headphone, so it's part of the lifestyle market essentially, but it still captures the more professional aspects and the more, classic looking design that a pro headphone incorporates. So moving over to what you receive in the packaging. In the box you get two cables, which is essentially one that incorporates the iOS remote controls, which is suitable for your iDevices, and the other cable incorporates the Android controls. Also you get your documentation such as your warranty and the manual, as well as a 1/4-inch jack suitable for home devices as well as studio AV devices. Now moving over to the comfortability of the AKG K545, it is a very comfortable headphone for me, and it's particularly because of the large diameter opening of the ear cup, so it would accommodate a vast array of ear sizes and result in the ear pads resting comfortably over your ears as opposed to applying pressure upon them. Also, the headband offers adequate padding and strikes a balance between comfortability as well as aesthetics, and not resulting in a rather, large and, obnoxious looking headband. So this is a very comfortable headphone, especially for me, and it should be for a vaster amount of users. Now, the durability and the aesthetics of this headphone is outstanding. This is a hybrid of metal as well as plastic and some kind of like soft rubberized material. I don't know really what to call it, but it's a very nice feeling, very nice looking material. So it's a very rigid and durable feeling and looking headphone. Also, it has a nice classic pro aesthetic look to it, so it looks very, very mature and elegant, as opposed to a lot of headphones nowadays from like Beats, Vimoda, Skull Candy that look rather cheap and more youthful in its design. This looks like it's just meant for audio and strictly business, just no other kind of perks and anything. It's just strictly pure audio. I like this rather, mature professional look that this headphone has to offer. And now let's move over to the most important part of this review, which is the sound characteristics and the sound quality of the AKG K545. I feel that this headphone is a really beautiful sound, and just a quick overview of the headphones that I recently had, which were portable based headphones. It was the Logitech UE6000s, the Vimoda LP1s, the Vimoda M100, the Ferrari Cavallino T350, the NAD VISO HP50, as well as the Sennheiser Momentum. Now, all of those headphones are relatively good, while some of them stood out and delivered very good sound quality. And my favorite headphones out of that bunch was essentially the Sennheiser Momentum and the NAD VISO HP50. And they both basically complemented each other, with the Momentum offering a more lively and engaging tonality. However, the space and the technicalities of the headphone wasn't as good as the NAD VISO HP50, which was more accurate, more spacious and articulate in its presentation, but it wasn't really as engaging in my preference, and particularly with the music that I listen to. So essentially, this headphone captures both of those headphones, in a sense. It captures the lively and engaging tonality of the Momentums, as well as the technicality and the overall spatial presentation that the HP50 offers, and this is a very beautiful sound as a result. So let's start off with the bass presentation. Now, the bass on these are not elevated to an unnatural level such as the Vimoda M100 or the LP. It's a very accurate bass towards the sub bass region, and then that's when it sort of gives off its emphasis. This is kind of like AKG's response to some of the complaints that the K550 and the K551 had. It had a very open sound signature, but the bass wasn't really as emphasized enough for a lot of different genres. So AKG sort of like they pretty much boosted the bass primarily in the sub bass, which is where you would want to boost the bass, because if you boost the upper and the mid bass, it kind of may introduce itself and kind of like create a mask over the mid range and kind of reduce some of the details that you can hear there. And that's exactly where, unfortunately, the Momentum's kind of suffered, because it had a wide band bass boost, meaning that the upper, mid, and the lower bass were all kind of boosted over the mid range, and as a result, it kind of gave like a sort of veil over the mid-range and resulted in some of the subtleties and details being lost in the mix. So this bass is very, very nice and smooth, very textured, and it gives that nice visceral impact for my favorite genres such as drum and bass and electronic music. So the bass is just right on the money, right where I like it. For acoustical, where, you know, when the mid bass comes in with the drums actually sound like drums and doesn't sound like it's in your face because of a mid bass boost. So this is a very best of both worlds in terms of its presentation in the mid bass. Now moving over to the mid range, which is my favorite frequency. This captures a beautiful rendition of the mid range, especially the vocals. They come through nice and full, very clear, very articulate, and just full of life. This is essentially what I loved about the Sennheiser Momentums, as well as the HP50, but the HP50 kind of didn't capture the tonality. It kind of had like a very slight hollow sound to it, because I think that was kind of like the effect that they were trying to go for with the room speakers, because in the room, the vocals really don't sound as full as what you'd get with a headphone. It'll sound a bit more subdued and hollow, but I prefer the headphone mid-range over a speaker mid-range, so I ended up preferring the Sennheiser Momentum's mid-range presentation over the HP50's mid-range presentation. But this offers essentially the level of tonality and the fullness in the vocals that the Momentums has, as well as the separation and the articulation and the placement in the soundscape that the HP50 has. Once again, this is a very beautiful rendition, especially in the mid-range, which is my favorite frequency. Moving over to the treble, this is where, for me, it can kill a headphone, because a lot of headphones like to induce a very exciting amount of treble, which kind of gives the impression of false details, and it kind of wows the listener at first. And the headphone that did this for me was the Ferrari Cavallino T350. It really only sounded good with synthesized music, and then when you went over to music that has like vocals or instruments, you can kind of see that the tonality and the articulation was really not proportionally correct. It was kind of very artificial sounding because it induced sibilance that wasn't necessarily really there in the recording. So treble that's too, you know, boosted is going to really detract from the listening experience, in my opinion. It really takes away from the sense of naturalness in the vocals region, as well as just the entire musical soundscape. So this has it has a natural rendition of the treble. It's not as subdued as the Momentums, and it's kind of like in line with the HP50's treble. I kind of like that treble. It's present when it's necessary in the recording, but it doesn't really add anything else that's going to induce listener fatigue and induce sibilance to the vocals and detract from the natural tonality in that specific region. So this is a very nice, lively treble. I don't really find any nitpickings or any kind of flaws in this treble. It's a very good treble. It provides very nice open soundscape and soundstage, very articulate separation in the instruments as a result of this treble. So moving over to the soundstage now, this is a very expansive sounding headphone, and that's where the Momentums kind of lacked. The Momentum's it's separated adequately enough, but the soundstage size and the proportion and the projection of the sounds coming towards you wasn't as convincing as this or the HP50s. And as a result, it kind of gave a dull atmosphere to the music and sounded rather, you know, monotone in the dynamic range and how the music can, you know, kind of surround you and give you that full, you know, speaker-like experience. However, this really is a very expansive soundstage, and this is kind of like coming from the design of the K550, which is probably, I would think, the best soundstage in a closed-back headphone. So this kind of incorporates most of its capabilities, but this doesn't have the soundstage of that headphone. But the soundstage for this, nonetheless, is still exceptional, with very distinct razor-sharp articulation in the instruments, and it just gives you a nice, open, a vast experience that just captivates you and just leaves you mesmerized as you're listening to the music. It really makes you forget that you're listening to a pair of headphones, and you just kind of like relax and enjoy the music. So overall, I really love the sound of these. This incorporates the strengths of my two previous favorite headphones, while disregarding their weaknesses. Has a very beautiful, very professional, sophisticated, classy design, which will accommodate all attires, especially business attire, which is very important for me. I love this, you know, no bullshit headphone design. It just has that straight to the point. This is all about sound quality. It just looks very classy and professional, and it doesn't really look cheap and, you know, edgy and youthful like a lot of other headphones. So this review hasn't covered anything that you wanted to know. feel free to post them in the comments below. I try to answer them to the best of my ability. Thanks for watching this, guys. Later.